Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! You see, I have a severe peanut and tree nut allergy. We're talking life-threatening stuff here. One wrong bite and I could end up in the hospital or worse. My parents drilled it into me from a young age. Always read labels, don't eat food unless you're sure it's safe, and carry your EpiPen everywhere. Now you'd think teachers would understand this, right? Well, not Mrs. Smarty Pants. She was one of those teachers who seemed to hate kids. Always yelling, always thinking she was right. I swear she got a kick out of making students cry. So there I was minding my own business, coloring away while waiting for class to start. Mrs. Smarty Pants comes in with this math worksheet and a bunch of candy. Now, I'm all for fun math activities, but when I saw those M&Ms, my heart sank. I knew I couldn't have them. I say, Mrs. Smarty Pants, I can't eat those. I'm allergic. Don't be silly. They are just regular M&Ms. There are no peanuts in them. But my mom says I'm allergic to the regular ones too. Nonsense. They are perfectly fine. You can have them. Now, I may have been young, but I was not stupid. I knew better than to trust someone who clearly didn't understand allergies. But Mrs. Smarty Pants wouldn't let it go. Stop being difficult. Just take the candy and do your work. I really can't. It's not safe for me. She's getting visibly annoyed. If you don't start behaving, I'm going to call your mother, and you'll be in big trouble. That's when I had an idea. My mom will back me up, no question. So I decided to call her bluff. Okay, call her. She froze. She clearly thought I'd back down. But nope, she marched over to her desk, picked up the phone and dialed my mom's number. Now, I couldn't hear exactly what my mom was saying, but let me tell you, the entire class could hear her voice coming through that phone. Mrs. Smarty Pants' face went from smug to scared real quick. Mom, voice audible even from across the room. What do you mean you tried to make my child eat something they are allergic to? Mrs. Smarty Pants, stammering. I didn't think. Didn't think? My child could die. Do you understand that? The yelling went on for a good 5 minutes. By the end, Mrs. Smarty Pants looked like she wanted to crawl under her desk and disappear. When she finally hung up, she walked over to me, avoiding eye contact with the rest of the class who were all staring at her. Mrs. Smarty Pants quietly, Here, you can have these instead. She handed me a pack of Skittles. Turns out she had them the whole time but decided to be difficult about it. I happily took my Skittles and did my math worksheet while she sat at her desk, probably wondering how a 7-year-old just schooled her. But it didn't end there. Later that day, I found out my mom had sent an email to the principal. Apparently, it was a second draft because the first one was, let's just say, it wasn't very polite. The principal took it seriously though. Mrs. Smarty Pants had to take a refresher course on dealing with student allergies. You know, the same course she'd already taken at the beginning of the year but clearly did not pay attention to. You'd think after something like that, the school would let her go, but nope, they must have been really short on teachers because she stuck around. She didn't give me any more trouble after that though. Funny how almost killing a kid can change a teacher's attitude. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I'd eaten those M&Ms. Would I have blown up like a Thanksgiving beret balloon? Would Mrs. Smarty Pants' career have tanked? Who knows? All I know is that I'm glad I didn't have to find out the hard way. So, there you have it, folks. My first great adventure in standing up to an entitled teacher who thought she knew better than everyone else. Remember, just because someone's an adult doesn't mean they are always right. Trust your instincts and don't be afraid to speak up when it really matters. Let me tell you about how I, a hard-working black man, ended up buying a house in one of those fanciest neighborhoods in town and got caught up in a crazy situation with an entitled neighbor. For years, I've been grinding away at my tech startup, late nights, endless coffee, and more sit-backs than I care to remember. But finally, after what felt like a lifetime, we hit the jackpot. A major tech company acquired us for a sum that still makes my head spin when I think about it. Suddenly, I went from barely scraping by to having more money than I knew what to do with. My wife and I decided it was time to move out of our cramped apartment and find a place where our kids could have a real yard to play in. We searched for weeks until we found the perfect house. It was in this upscale neighborhood with manicured lawns and fancy cars in every driveway. I'll admit I felt a little out of place when we first drove through, but the house was everything we wanted and more. The day we closed on the house, I couldn't stop smiling. We spent the next week moving in, arranging furniture, and trying to make the place feel like home. The neighbors on one side came over to welcome us with a homemade pie. They seemed nice enough, though I caught them exchanging a few surprised looks when they saw us. The house on the other side was quiet. We found out from another neighbor that the woman living there was on vacation in Europe for a month. No big deal, I figured we'd meet her when she got back. Everything was going great until about 3 weeks after we moved in. I was out front mowing the lawn on a Saturday afternoon when I heard screeching tires. A car came flying into the driveway next door, and out stomped this middle-aged white woman with a look on her face like she'd just bit into a lemon. She marched right up to me, not even bothering to say hello. "What do you think you're doing?" Mowing my lawn." "Your lawn? Don't make me laugh. I know for a fact that Johnsons live here, and they are certainly not black." I tried to keep my cool even though I could feel my blood starting to boil. "The Johnsons moved out. My family and I bought this house a few weeks ago." "That's impossible. There is no way someone like you could afford a house in this neighborhood." "Excuse me? What's that supposed to mean?" "You know exactly what I mean. This is a respectable neighborhood. We don't need your kind bringing down property values." Wow, was this really happening in 2024? "Look, lady, I don't know who you think you are, but this is my house. I bought it fair and square." "Don't you lie to me, you thug. I am calling the police right now. They'll sort this out." She stormed back to her car, and for a second I thought that would be the end of it. But then she came back and my heart nearly stopped. She was holding a gun. "I am not letting you steal from my neighbors. You stay right there until the police arrive." I raised my hand slowly, trying not to make any sudden moves. "Ma'am, please put the gun down. This is all a big misunderstanding." "Shut up, I know your type. Always looking for a handout. Trying to take what doesn't belong to you." Just then, my wife came out the front door, probably wondering why I'd stopped mowing. "Honey, what's going on?" When Karen saw her, she started waving her gun around wildly. "There is more of you? Get out of that house right now." My wife froze, her eyes wide with fear. "Baby, go back inside and call the police now." "I already called them. They'll be here any minute to haul you criminals away." The next few minutes felt like hours. Karen kept ranting and raving, spewing racial slurs and wild accusations. I tried to stay calm, knowing that one wrong move could end in disaster. Finally, I heard sirens in the distance. 2 police cars pulled up, and 4 officers got out, hands on their weapons. "Ma'am, put the gun down immediately." "Officer, thank God you're here. These people are squatting in a Johnson's house." "Put the weapon down now, or we will be forced to take action." Reluctantly, Karen lowered the gun. One of the officers quickly moved in to take it from her. "Now, what's going on here?" I tell them. "Officers, I am the new owner of this house. We moved in 3 weeks ago. This woman just showed up and started threatening us with a gun." "He's lying. There is no way he could afford this house. He must be a criminal." "Sir, do you have any proof of ownership?" "Yes, all my paperwork is inside. I'll be happy to show you." The officers had me slowly go inside and retrieve the documents while they kept an eye on Karen. When I came back out, I handed over the closing papers and my ID. "Everything looks to be in order here. The house is legally owned by this gentleman and his family." Karen's face turned an even brighter shade of red. "That's impossible. Those papers must be forged." "Ma'am, we're going to need you to calm down. You're the one who's broken several laws here today." "Officers, I want to press charges. She threatened me and my family with a deadly weapon and has been verbally abusing us with racial slurs." "You can't do this to me. Don't you know who I am?" "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As they read Karen her rights and put her in handcuffs, I felt relieved. My wife came out and hugged me tight, tears in her eyes. She asks me, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. It's over now." But it wasn't really over. In the days that followed, we learned that Karen was a prominent member of the local country club and her husband really was a hotshot lawyer. They tried to use their connections to get the charges dropped, but the evidence was too clear. I hired a lawyer on my own and not only pursued criminal charges but also filed a civil lawsuit for emotional distress, racial discrimination, and assault. The case made local headlines and soon the whole neighborhood was talking about it. Karen and her husband tried to paint me as the aggressor, claiming I had threatened them first, as our security cameras had caught the whole incident, leaving no doubt about what really happened. The criminal case was open and shut. Karen was convicted of assault with a deadly weapon, making criminal threats and civil rights violations. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The civil case dragged on a bit longer, but in the end, the jury was on our side. They awarded us a settlement of $2.5 million for the trauma we'd endured, and to send a message that this kind of behavior would not be tolerated. Karen and her husband were forced to sell their house to pay the settlement. Sometimes I look back on that crazy day and shake my head. I'm just glad I didn't let her intimidate me out of the home I bought with everything I had. My teenager and husband are constantly leaving the baby gates I have installed on the stairs and door to the mudroom open. The dog will then go into the mudroom and eat the cat litter, or she'll urinate on the carpeted landing, or go up to our room to get into our trash or the diaper pail. It drives me crazy. Making them clean it up doesn't seem to deter them from constantly forgetting to shut the gate. My teenager maintains that they don't leave the gate open. So I bought one of those window alarms that have a separate magnet and the main unit. When you separate them, it alarms, indicating that the window is open. You can put these devices just about anywhere, such as doors, fridge or freezer, cabinets, and so on. You can also set a delay, which is what I did, so it doesn't alarm just from someone walking through. I'm currently upstairs with a toddler for a nap and heard a teenager go down the stairs, and 30 seconds later, the alarm starts going off. I sent them laughing face emojis, and they just said go away. I responded with a kissy face and offered to turn it up louder if they'd like me to. But I'm sitting here trying not to wake the baby up from laughing. I didn't tell my husband I bought these alarms, so I can't wait for him to come home and discover them too. For those suggesting the timer should be shorter, I agree, but I just don't have another option. There are 3 settings: 0 seconds delay with the alarm playing every 5 seconds, 30 seconds delay with the alarm playing every 20 seconds, or 0 seconds delay with the alarm playing continuously. Other alarms I looked at had similar options, but this one was cost effective, came in a 2-pack, and could arrive within a day. My husband is home but hasn't gone upstairs or through the mudroom yet. He usually skips the mudroom and comes inside through the sliding doors. It's almost time for the toddler's bath, so I'm sure it'll happen soon. As an update, my husband did indeed leave the gate open. He made it back over to the stove where he had the loud fans on, so he didn't immediately hear the alarm. Everyone else heard it, and I said, "Who left the gate open?" My middle child immediately gave up my husband and said, "He did it." My husband said, "It wasn't me," and she fired back at him like he just came down the stairs. So it definitely was him. Then the alarm went off again and he said, "What is that?" And then, "Really, dear?" before rolling his eyes and marching over to fix the gate. Everyone had a pretty good laugh about it. I had to give it a trial run and see how well it deters him from leaving it open in the future. I keep getting comments about training my dog. Thanks for the concern. But she only urinates in that one spot. It's a muscle memory thing because we have scrubbed, steamed, painted, then replaced carpet and underlayment. And she will still squat there and only there, nowhere else in the house. As for her getting into diapers, socks, and underwear, we've worked with her veterinarian about the possibility of using medication, but ultimately have been told it's largely a dog thing. Some dogs aren't very interested in feces and other body odors, while others can't get enough of them. She will only go for the soiled diapers, so she seems to be driven by the same urge she gets when she goes after the cat litter. We've been told we can put her on essentially doggy mood stabilizers, or we can just keep those things out of her reach. I don't want to put her on medication if we can help it, so this is our solution right now. If it proves ineffective in the future, or she starts getting into other things, we will revisit the behavioral issues with a veterinarian. I also keep getting told to get a spring-loaded gate. They are spring-loaded. The issue is that all of these auto-close gates also have a feature where being pushed open to 90 degrees causes them to stay open and disable the auto-close. until they get nudged enough to come out of the open sitting. The cast: Karen manager, store manager, meat manager, grocery manager. This story takes place about 2 months before I quit my job at the grocery store and started my first year of college. This story has a bit of exhibition, so please bear with me. I was glad when I got to put my Karen manager in her place. Things had slowly started to cool down, and for the next few months, it was business as usual. The old store manager had to open another store, so they brought in a new one. This new store manager was very professional and quite kind. The store manager always recognized various employees in different departments for their hard work. This recognition of us, lower employees, made our Karen manager less than happy. I started to notice a lot more people being hired, and everyone's hours suffered because of it. I later found out they did this because part-time employees could be paid less, and they wanted to cut costs. This is the life of a retail worker. I wanted to keep making money in preparation for college, so I went into Karen's manager office and said, "Hey Karen, I noticed my hours were being cut, and I wanted to see if I could pick up some extra shifts." She scoffed at me and said, "It's a department-wide decision. If you want hours, go to another department. I wouldn't waste your time though." I looked at her confused and asked, "Why not? They only have hard-working employees in their departments. You wouldn't fit in." I was dumbfounded. I thought Karen's bullying routine was over, but I was wrong. I stood there unsure of what to say while Karen had a smug smile plastered on her face. I just turned around and walked out of her office. I didn't know if Karen had already lied to the other managers or not, but I decided to ask. I first went to the meat department and explained my situation. I told the manager that our department's hours were being cut and asked if I could do anything to help them out. The meat manager smiled warmly and said, "I understand how frustrating low hours can be. We have someone on vacation for a few weeks, and we've had to stay late to wash all the pans and plates for our meat. It's simple washing and drying. You get to wear headphones within reason, and you would make what a starting meat associate would. Want the job?" I was beaming and immediately took the offer. The job was simple, as he promised, and I took it seriously. I wanted to show other managers that I was a hard worker and reliable. 3 weeks passed by with no issues. Inevitably, their missing associate came back, and I had to be let go from that position. Luckily, I had spoken to the grocery manager the day before, and our conversation was somewhat similar. I explained my situation and she understood. She said, "You just need to tidy up the shelves, put up products on aisle-labeled carts, and help unload trucks when they come in. Your pay will be a starting grocery associate pay." For context, both types of associate pay were an increase from my normal department. I took the offer and immediately helped the grocery department. Everything was fine until grocery hired a full-time employee, and I had to go back to my normal department. I expected business as usual, but I got one big surprise. The first day back, Karen yanked me into her office, and the conversation went like this. "What do you think you're doing? I told you our department's hours were cut. I know, you said I could try working with other departments. You also said some other nasty things, but I don't care to repeat those." She glared at me and said, "You're making our department look bad. We're trying to cut costs, and you're burning through hours we don't have." I decided to correct her and said, "I understand you want to cut costs, and that you only have so many hours. I didn't take up any extra hours from our department. I took your rude suggestion and worked for other departments that were short-staffed and had an abundance of hours. I did nothing wrong." She growled at me and said, "Listen, it's not fair to others in our department if you get full-time hours and other employees don't." I held my ground and said, "This system of hiring tons of part-timers is not smart, and it's hurting quality full-time employees who need the hours. If you insist on hiring all these people, there is nothing stopping them from doing exactly what I did. There are plenty of departments that could use help." I was fed up with Karen's attitude and spoke my mind. "If you think my management practice is so ridiculous, you can just leave." I was tired of her nonsense and just smiled. "Okay, I will." I turned in my belongings and clocked out. I said goodbye to my friends and drove home. The next day I was enjoying sleeping in for once when I got a phone call. It was a new store manager. I answered. "Hello, store manager. How are you this morning? Sorry to bother you, but could you come back to the store? I looked over your firing yesterday." And Karen was totally out of line. I talked to other managers you've worked for and they all had glowing reviews of your work. We are pretty short staffed and we need you back. I smiled. It was always nice to be needed after all. I tell him, if you transfer me to grocery effective immediately with a pay pump to boot, I will help your department when needed. But I want grocery manager as my new boss. Done. I just pulled up your file and transferred you over. You have my word. Grocery manager is your new boss and Karen has no authority over you anymore. I will be having a long talk with her about her managerial practices, believe me. I smirked and said, I will see you in 10 minutes. I drove to the store and walked in. I picked up my belongings from the store manager and shook his hand. I saw the shocked expression of Karen and snickered. I turned to a nearby customer with a smile. These last few weeks were going to be the best.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.